Make It Stick. Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, Mark A. McDaniel. A practical learning book with a calm, evidence-driven tone, focused on how memory forms in real classrooms and everyday self-study. Most students work hard but practice the wrong thing. This book is useful because it explains why rereading and highlighting feel productive while producing weak recall under pressure. It replaces vague advice with principles you can test in 1 week. The key move is retrieval practice. Instead of looking at notes, you try to pull the idea out of your head. That struggle feels slower, but it builds durable access. A simple student method is the closed book recap. Read a short section, close it, then write what you remember in plain language. Check and correct. Repeat tomorrow, not 10 minutes later. Another high-return idea is spacing. Many students cram because it feels efficient. Spacing feels harder because you forget a little between sessions. This book explains that the slight forgetting is part of why the memory strengthens when you return. In practical terms, you want shorter sessions spread over more days. For a semester, this means you schedule 2 or 3 brief returns to each topic. The book also defends interleaving. That means mixing problem types rather than doing 20 identical ones in a row. It feels messy, but it trains you to choose the right method under test conditions. If you are in math, physics, or languages, that choice is most of the grade. To apply it today, end each study session by closing the book and writing what you remember, then check and correct. Those corrections are where learning happens. Deep Work, Cal Newport. A focused, low-drama productivity book that feels like a workshop on attention. Set in modern academic life where interruptions are constant and shallow tasks look urgent. Students often assume focus is a personality trait. This book treats it like a trainable skill with simple rules. The main point is that high-value work requires long, protected blocks, and that shallow tasks quietly steal your best hours. The student version of Deep Work starts with a time choice. Pick one block you can defend most days. 90 minutes is great, 60 minutes still works. During that block, you do the hardest academic task, not the easiest. That usually means problem sets, writing drafts, or active recall for a difficult class. The second step is ritual. Same location, same start cue, same tools. You sit down, open only what you need, and start. This reduces the friction that makes you procrastinate. The book also recommends a shutdown routine. When you finish studying for the day, you make a short list for tomorrow, then stop. That reduces background anxiety and improves sleep, which is a hidden study multiplier. A useful student detail is how the book frames busyness. Many students fill time with messages, quick searches, and endless organizing. It feels responsible, but it is usually avoidance. Deep Work gives you a cleaner measure. Did you produce something that can be graded, practiced, or improved? If yes, you did the work. If you share a room, make the block visible. Headphones, a timer, and one open tab is a signal to others and to your own brain that this is the focused hour. Atomic Habits. James Clear, a friendly, structured habit book with a practical tone, built around everyday environments like dorms, libraries, and busy schedules where energy is inconsistent. The most useful student lesson here is that habits are shaped by cues, not willpower. If studying requires the perfect mood, it will fail during midterms. Instead, you build tiny automatic actions that trigger the work. Start with identity. Decide what kind of student you are becoming, then prove it with small evidence. The smallest version matters. 1 page of notes, 1 practice problem, 1 paragraph draft. When the habit is tiny, you do it even on bad days. The second rule is to make the habit obvious and easy. Put the textbook on your desk before you leave for class. Keep the laptop charger where you study. Remove friction from the start. Then make distractions harder. Log out of social apps. Keep your phone in a bag and use app limits that require effort to override. The book also explains why tracking works. A simple calendar streak or checklist makes progress visible. For students, the key is to track the input, not the grade. Track minutes of deep work, retrieval sessions completed, or drafts written. Grades follow, but they arrive later. This book pairs well with more technical study advice because it makes the advice repeatable. Once you have the cue and routine, you can insert better study methods inside that routine, and your semester becomes far less chaotic. Make It Stick. Peter C. Brown, Henry L. Roediger III, Mark A. McDaniel. A practical learning guide with a calm, evidence-based style centered on the study experience of real students facing quizzes, labs, and cumulative finals. When deadlines pile up, many students switch to passive review because it feels fast. This book helps you build an exam week plan that still uses retrieval, which is efficient when time is scarce. The trick is to reduce scope, not intensity. Build a 1-page exam map. List the main topics. Under each topic, write 3 to 5 questions you should be able to answer from memory. This converts vague fear into testable prompts. Then study with short retrieval cycles. Try to answer the prompt without notes. Check, correct, move on, return later. Use mixed practice on purpose. Instead of doing one chapter at a time, alternate topics. That trains selection. Exams often reward the ability to recognize which tool applies, not the ability to repeat one tool. If you have a formula sheet, do not memorize the sheet. Practice choosing the right formula from a prompt. Another high-value tactic is to explain aloud. Pretend you are teaching a friend. If you cannot explain it cleanly, you do not know it yet. This is also a safe way to study without looking at answers. Finally, this book makes a quiet point about confidence. Feeling fluent is not the same as being prepared. Exam week is when students need the truth more than comfort. Retrieval gives you that truth, and it tells you where to spend the next hour, which is the real advantage. Deep Work, Cal Newport. A clear, calm guide to attention in a noisy world, grounded in the environment students live in, with phones, group chats, and constant low-level demands. A common student trap is believing you can multitask. In practice, you switch, and each switch leaves a residue that makes reading slower and problem-solving shallower. This book helps you treat attention as a budget you protect. One tactic that fits campus life is scheduled internet. Decide specific windows for messages and browsing. Outside those windows, you stay offline during study blocks. This removes the constant decision of whether to check, which is a hidden drain. Another student-friendly idea is to define what counts as shallow work. For many students, shallow work looks like reorganizing folders, color-coding notes, or searching for the perfect resource. Those can be useful, but they should be limited and time-boxed. Deep work is where you write, solve, recall, and build. The book also encourages boredom tolerance. If you always fill tiny gaps with scrolling, your brain forgets how to stay with discomfort. Studying often feels like discomfort at first. Practicing short periods of no input time, like walking without your phone, trains that tolerance. This is not about becoming rigid. It is about giving your mind predictable quiet. When your focus is protected, you finish earlier, and you get the kind of free time that actually feels restful. The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. A story-driven personal finance book with a calm tone, focused on everyday decisions and long timelines rather than spreadsheets or trading. Students live with uneven income, unpredictable costs, and constant comparison. This book helps because it reframes money as behavior, not math. That makes good choices possible even with limited cash. One idea that fits student life is margin. Margin means you keep a small buffer. You do not spend every dollar you have. This buffer protects you from emergencies that become debt. It also reduces stress, which improves study performance. If you are on a small budget, margin can be small, but it should be consistent. Another student lesson is the danger of lifestyle inflation. When your income rises a little, it is tempting to upgrade everything. Housel explains why long-term stability often comes from not upgrading as fast as you could. For students, that might mean choosing a cheaper phone plan, keeping a working laptop longer, and avoiding subscriptions you forget to cancel. The book also highlights how financial decisions are emotional. Social pressure, anxiety, and impatience create expensive mistakes. Learning to name those pressures is a skill. When you can say, "I am doing this to impress people," you can often stop. This is a good book for students because it does not require prior knowledge. It teaches a mindset that stays useful when you graduate and money becomes more complex. The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel. A reflective finance book with a calm narrative style designed to teach long-horizon thinking through stories about uncertainty, patience, and compounding. Students make big decisions with small information. You choose a major, an internship, and a first job while your identity is still forming. This book does not give a career plan, but it gives a mindset that protects you from short-term pressure. The compounding lesson applies beyond investing. Skills compound, reputation compounds, relationships compound. Small weekly improvements done for years beat dramatic bursts. A student-friendly way to use this is to pick one skill that has leverage. Writing, coding, statistics, a second language, or public speaking. Spend a little time on it every week, even when it is not required. The book also talks about luck and risk. Students often compare themselves to a highlight reel. Housel's stories make it easier to accept that outcomes are noisy. You can make good choices and still get setbacks. The point is to build a plan that survives setbacks. A useful exercise after reading is to define your enough. Enough is the point where you stop trading long-term stability for short-term status. Students can define enough in simple terms, like low debt. a decent emergency buffer, and a job path that leaves room to grow. This kind of thinking reduces anxiety because you stop needing every decision to be perfect, and you start needing decisions to be survivable. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl. A reflective memoir and ideas book with a serious, humane tone, focused on how people endure hardship and build inner purpose when external control is limited. Student stress is not the same as extreme suffering, but the emotional pattern can rhyme. You face pressure, uncertainty, and fear of failure. This book is valuable because it separates circumstances from response. Frankl argues that you cannot always choose what happens, but you can choose an attitude and a next action. For students, this can sound abstract until you apply it. When you get a bad grade, you cannot rewrite the past. You can choose whether the next week is avoidance or practice. When you feel overwhelmed, you cannot instantly remove all demands. You can choose one small task that restores agency. The book also warns against waiting for perfect conditions. Many students postpone effort until motivation returns. Frankl's perspective helps you act while you feel imperfect, because action is part of how you recover stability. Read this book slowly. It is short, but it changes the way you interpret pressure. Used well, it makes you calmer, which improves learning, relationships, and health. It also adds depth to your education, because it connects achievement with values rather than anxiety. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl. A serious, thoughtful book that blends lived experience with psychological insight, offering a calm way to think about purpose without needing motivational slogans. Many students believe purpose must be a single lifelong calling. That belief creates anxiety, because you feel late before you have even started. This book suggests a different frame. Meaning can be found in responsibilities, relationships, and chosen attitudes. In student life, purpose can be seasonal. This semester, your purpose might be mastering a difficult class, supporting a friend, or building a portfolio. The goal is not to find the final answer. The goal is to choose a direction that makes effort feel justified. A practical way to use this book is to write a short meaning statement for the next 8 weeks. Keep it plain. It should include one duty to yourself, one duty to others, and one value you want to practice. Then, when you feel scattered, you use that statement to choose. Frankl's ideas also help with perfectionism. If your purpose is to learn, you can accept mistakes as part of learning. If your purpose is to look smart, mistakes feel like danger. This shift is subtle but powerful. It creates students who keep going, which is often the difference between passing and quitting. 1984, George Orwell. A stark dystopian novel with a serious tone, set in a controlled society where surveillance and propaganda shape daily life and language is treated as a tool of power. Students read a flood of claims, headlines, and hot takes. This book is not a study manual, but it trains alertness. It shows how words can narrow thought and how fear can push people to accept contradictions. Read it as a critical thinking workout. Notice techniques that show up in real life. Repetition, simplified slogans, redefining words, social punishment for dissent. The novel gives you a vocabulary for these patterns without needing a lecture. It also helps students in writing and debate. You become more sensitive to vague phrases, empty certainty, and claims that cannot be checked. That makes your essays clearer and your arguments stronger. One useful study habit after reading is to practice translating vague claims into testable statements. If a sentence cannot be tested or clarified, it might be rhetoric instead of information. This is a skill for every field, not just politics. Because it is fiction, it also builds stamina for reading longer narratives, which helps in humanities courses. It is a serious book, but it repays careful reading, and you can discuss it without spoilers by focusing on its ideas and atmosphere. To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee. A thoughtful classic with a calm human tone, set in a small Southern American town where community reputation, injustice, and conscience collide in everyday life. Students often treat literature as homework. This book works better as empathy training and writing training at the same time. It asks you to notice how people justify their choices and how social rules shape behavior. The student value is twofold. First, it improves moral reasoning without giving you a simple checklist. You see how easy it is for groups to normalize unfairness. Second, it models clear writing. Scenes are grounded. Sentences are readable. That makes it a good reference when you want your own essays to sound natural instead of inflated. If you are worried about starting a classic, this is one of the more accessible options in tone and pacing. It is also frequently taught, which means you will find strong discussion resources and academic context when you need them. Some editions mention a later published related novel, but you do not need anything else to read this one. It stands on its own, and you can take it as a complete experience. A simple way to use it for school is to pay attention to how a scene is built. Notice what details appear first, how dialogue reveals values, and how the narration stays clear even when the topic is complex. If you want one simple use, read a chapter, then summarize it in 3 plain sentences. That exercise upgrades essays, presentations, and even interview answers.